Alrighty. Oops. 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 I'm leaking question number one. None of them saw that. That's okay. They're not watching the stream. I don't think. I don't know. I guess we'll find out when we get to question one if someone sounds like they have a super prepared answer. So, welcome to episode 8 of Around the Saloon. Uh, we have a kind of rare episode because one, this is one of the few ones that we have had that does not include Ron Mexico in it. So he has been in 5 of 7, and this is it's a rarity. It's also an episode that doesn't include a board member, which there's a rarity there too. I'm pretty sure every episode, besides this one, has included either Ron or a board member, and that's because tonight we are debuting two new guest stars here, two new co-hosts, two new Around the Saloon um, challengers. I guess we'll go with that name, sure. And those are Always Just in Time and Corridon. With the loss of Brushy, Mako said he was a board member. I don't compete. So I mean I'm always on here. I'm a stable. I would love to compete, but only if Brushy's going to be my host. So with the loss of Brushy on the show, we had to replace him with some new talent. So we got some fresh faces in here. But let's start off with our reigning champion, our winner from last week, Marty B. How are you doing tonight, Marty?
Pretty good. Not bad at all. How are you?
I'm doing all right. I came from my class ended at 8:40, and I got the stream set up, and I got my lovely tribute to last week and to Ron Mexico, my snack, my
Ah,
banana. I got my banana. This
the
is
big banana.
yes, the big banana. This is for Ron. And I have peeled it the correct way with the stem as the holder. And that's for our hat for calling me a redditor because I said I peel my bananas like that. Anyways, let's move on to our other returning guest, two-time champion Icicles. Icicles, how are you doing?
I'm good. I'm actually glad that there aren't any other board members here because that gives me more of a chance. Last time I was on, not go so well.
No, you didn't. Well, that's because you won twice in a row, and someone had to step in and stop you.
Yeah, you bring in the ringer hat. Yeah, that's totally fair.
Exactly. I mean, if Marty B wins tonight, we already know who's going to be on the show next week, right? Anyways, actually, that wouldn't happen because I'm pretty sure Steffi already told me she will be on next week. Um, now we have two new guys. We can say it now. CMAC just redeemed his reward of is Edwin Hall of Famed yet, and we can finally say yes, confirmed. Edwin is gone. We should probably change that reward, to be honest.
Is
Anyways,
Wait, it's
Edwin rotated yet?
it's not.
oh, you're right. We should change it to that. Yeah, because Hall of Fame's gone. We'll have to. Well, I'll have to edit that after the show. Anyways, let's talk to one of our new guests tonight. Let's start up here at the top right with Always Just in Time. Justin, how are you doing?
Hey, today's a very special day. I am always just in time today.
You were just in time too. Unlike Marty B here, who was not just in time for the show, and we thought we were going to have to replace him.
So you could get rid of me?
Starting off strong here, Marty. Starting off strong. We have one other new face, and that's Corden. Corden, how are you doing?
Doing pretty
Oops.
well. How you guys
Oh
doing?
no.
Uh-oh.
Oh God.
Oh, everything's exploded.
Oh God.
Oh no.
There we go.
Everything went.
Hello.
There we go. Yeah, no, doing well. I'm glad to have made it out. Thanks for having me on, Mako. It's gonna be great. Hopefully I can grab that crown.
Well, I mean, hopefully someone has to take it off of Marty because the first time he was on the show, he called it rigged, and so I have a vendetta.
It's too much power. It's going to his head, shows up late, thinks he can control it. Someone's gotta take him down.
Yeah, I agree. I agree. Uh, RoboCats is telling me to turn myself up. I'm up all the way. I'll make a little adjustment here on my mic, little mic thingy. Maybe that'll do some work. I'm also just not talking very loud, but that's kind of my fault. Anyways, let's get right into it. So we have 2 new people here, so I'm gonna do a very short recap on what we do each round, just because, just for their sake, in case. So we have 3 rounds here. First one being the mulligan, which is going to be your typical, I give you a question, you give me an answer kind of round. Nothing special to it. You'll each get a chance to answer when you're called on, and then you'll get points based on the strength of your arguments that you're making in your answer here. And then second round will be our face or trade rounds, which will be a shorter rapid fire rounds where you'll have the chance to go face, meaning you agree with the statement that I'm presenting to you, or trade, meaning that you are disagreeing. And I'll re-say that when we get to that round. And then our final round, which will be our duel round, and that will be when we cut to the 2 lowest points competitors from the competition, and we have a head-to-head with the final 3 questions of the night, and we will crown our winner. So let's get things kicked off here with our mulligan phase, and let's start off with Marty B at the top left, and let's go clockwise like always. So Marty B, Justin Isicles, and Corridon. And your first question of the night is going to deal with the new expansion. We're going to have a mix of questions coming from the new expansion, Forts and the Barrens, a mix of core set questions, then some THL questions. We do not have any Battlegrounds questions tonight, so it's all standard BlizzCon and THL related. So your first question, Marty, starting with you, will Forged in the Barrens be overshadowed by the introduction of the core set?
Not at all. No, Blizzard would never allow that. The core set is something that is pretty much going to feature cards primarily that we've seen before. So that's not going to feel as new. The focus has always been on the new cards, and they've shown that they're not afraid of pushing the envelope. So we've already seen a few legendaries in that. For example, there's the legendary that's a 1/6 Rush Frenzy. That card is already more insane than most neutral legendaries that we've seen in the core set, or most legendaries in general in the core set. So they're going to have a higher power level within this new expansion, regardless of whatever is in the core set, and therefore it can't be overshadowed. They want to enable new archetypes. These cards in the core set aren't going to be the enablers themselves. We're still going to see archetypes defined by new cards. You know, Blizzard's philosophy has always been surrounding this, and therefore they're going to make sure that they can push certain archetypes forward so that it doesn't feel like we're going to be stuck with this deck the entire time. This is going to be an expansion thing specifically. You're going to remember those decks fondly when someone mentions this expansion to you, and you're not going to think of the core set as any of the main drivers.
Sure. Justin, do you agree with this? Disagree? What are your thoughts?
I mean, I was expecting everyone here, smart people, to just be all in agreement, but what? No, not at all. What? This is the biggest change to Hearthstone in 5 years since Whispers of the Old Gods, since Standard became a thing in 2016. What? I'm so hyped about the core set. Not only that, we get it all for free. There's 235 cards in the core set, and we are getting every single one of them. You know how many years I've played Hearthstone? I still never owned Deathwing. Is the new Deathwing any good? Probably not. But I will get a chance to play it and play it in a bad deck and blow up my opponent's board and my entire hand. I cannot express to you how excited I am for that. There's only 135 cards in the Barons' comparison. I'll probably open like half of them and then dust another half because they don't see competitive play to keep up my account balance. Like, I mean, how many expansions do we have per year? We've had 3 per year for the past few years, plus we have mini sets now. This is just same old core set. Like, Kibler has been asking for this. People have been hyped of this for since the dawn of time, basically. No, this is what we care about. New Malagos, that changed too. There's so much more in the core set.
Well, hold off on that Malagos talk because we're definitely gonna get to that here tonight. Isicles, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I agree with Justin. I'll take it a little bit further. You referenced the biggest change since the introduction of Standard and split it off from Wild. I think it's even bigger than that because at the time, if you'd asked that question at the time, would the expansion at that point, Whispers of the Old Gods, have been overshadowed by Standard to Wild? No, because you were only just losing cards that were going to Wild. You weren't gaining anything new from the Standard set. It was just a couple expansions going away, and then this new expansion was the new hotness. But now with the core set really is the new hotness. I mean, you have not only new cards coming in, you have old cards coming back, and you have old cards changing. It's just a dramatic shift in terms of the card content itself. And I think with Forge and the Barons, we haven't seen too many cards yet. It seems like one of the mechanics is the introduction of spell schools, which I think we'll talk about maybe a little bit later, but it doesn't seem like that exciting of a new mechanic, just sort of a reshuffling. I'm really happy that they're introducing it, but that almost seems more like a core set thing than a Forge and the Barons thing. And the keyword that we've seen from Forge and the Barons so far is Frenzy, which I'm kind of giving a little bit of overkill vibes. There are going to be some cards that take really good advantage of it, such as the legendary that Marty mentioned, because it has Rush. But cards that don't have Rush, and in classes that don't have a way of doing initial damage, if you're expecting a card to survive to have some effect, it's always going to be muted. And that was the problem with Overkill. It was really hard to stick a minion that could do something like that for Overkill. I think Frenzy is going to probably fall into the same bucket. Now, could be proven wrong. We still have a lot of cards to go, and Animated Broomstick is still a card, so there could be ways for Frenzy to make an impact. But I think most of the excitement is going to be on the core set here, more so than Fortune the Barons as an expansion.
Pinflinger is also still a card.
True.
Gordon, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, Isaac kind of took it from me there. I think it's going to be overshadowed completely. And I was going to say, yeah, Animated Broomstick's a card. Everything getting rushed is going to be all right. But I definitely think it's going to be overshadowed. You're getting cards coming back, cards getting changed, Edwin getting rotated. You got the new Van Cleef coming in now. People are going to get hyped for that in the core set. You've got new legendaries coming in, even like the Overlord, which is going to be a rush. Give your entire hand, bring back those hand buff mechanics, I think, that people really like to play. They always tried to make hand buff Paladin a thing, but it was so hard to get cards in the deck and to stick them in. I think those are going to be it's going to be played. It's going to be helpful to Shadows or Forge and the Barons with those frenzies and staying alive and things like that. But I think it's going to be overshadowed completely. This is what we've been waiting for. The core set is exactly what everyone wants. It's the rotating seasons that we've been waiting for. You got wild cards coming back, like we said, change cards. And I mean, we don't know much from the Forge and the Barons right now. But just from watching BlizzCon and seeing the cards they've released, I'm not really sold on any of them. Are not blowing me away at all. So Frenzy's cool, but I don't think it's core set cool.
Mm-hmm. I completely agree. I think that with the introduction of Frenzy, personally, this is just kind of an indication to all of us that the Enrage card from the Warrior class is not going to be in the core set.
Yeah.
Just maybe. Anyways, let's talk a little bit about three of the core set cards that got announced at the beginning. Actually, not in the Hearthstone deep dive, but in the opening ceremony, and those were the three legendary dragons. The three legendary dragons that they're reworking, those being Malygos, Ysera, and Deathwing. So what I'm gonna do is let's go in reverse order here, starting with Corridon and then around to Marty B. And my question, starting with you, Corridon, is which of the three legendary dragon reworks will be the most impactful?
Oh, I definitely think Malagos is going to be the most impactful. Ysera's got some cool mechanics with the rework. You can you can dream it back to your hands. You could do some cool things with that. I think Deathwing's all right. I still don't think you want to be discarding cards if you're not a warlock. I mean, throwing cards away is bad. There's easier ways to remove minions than playing a 10 mana 12/12, discard some cards in your hands. Yes, it doesn't discard all of them like it used to, but it still discards some, which is bad. Malagos Spellweaver is, I think, going to be awesome. It not only changes, Malagos Druid, which has always been a deck no matter where you go. Malagos Druid just works with things like Omu and when people had Goose. It's just a deck you can fall back on and play well. now Malagos is actually going to support decks that are like Control Shaman, which have a hard time drawing cards and getting to those bigger spells to impact the board to stay alive. Well, this card literally only will draw you spells. You don't get mixed in with minions and dead cards. You're going to get those big removal spells that you need. And I think it's really going to give gas to those classes that have had a lot of issues drawing cards. I mean, we saw what was it, Mira's Crystal, like draw the rest of your deck in Rogue. This is pretty much a card just like that, but it's draw spells into your hands full. You still have a deck full of minions, but now you have your spells to enact the board, so your minions come out, you're safe. I think Malagos, 100%.
Sure. Icicles.
Yeah, so if you look at the 3 cards that they've announced so far, they're all big dragons. They're all cards that seemingly fit more in slower types of decks, control types of decks. And one of the hallmarks now of decks that can control games and actually be successful is card generation. We see it with Priest, not so much with Warrior, kind of. There's some lackeys and some other stuff that can maybe keep you going beyond just what's in your deck, but 2 of those cards don't really synergize that well with you already having a full hand of cards, and that's Ysera and Malagos. Ysera gives you 5 cards right away. How often are you as a control player always going to have the hand space to do that when it's impactful? And Malagos drawing a bunch of spells. I mean, there'll probably be some combo decks that synergize with that you can make work. But even Myers, like you mentioned, was better in a low curve rogue deck, and a rogue or another like a mage trying to make Malagos work. It's kind of a hard time surviving to that point to be able to draw their deck. Maybe it'll do some cool things with it. But I think the one is going to be Deathwing. I think Deathwing was not really playable now because you discard your entire hand. And for control classes, that's a death knell. Like it's a nice ace in the hole. Sometimes you get off a Draconic Lackey. Sometimes it saves you the game. Sometimes a Druid can't answer it. But more often than not, Deathwing was just like you couldn't win after you played it for the very rare circumstances. Now it's actually playable. Now there's some gamesmanship with it. You can actually generate cards that you're not afraid of having discarded. You have probably better tools for clearing a big board, but this helps you deal with like 1 or 2 really tough minions that you just want to get rid of. And that way you can develop your own tempo towards the late game. I will throw out there that we haven't seen the other 2 dragons. We haven't seen Alexstrasza. We haven't seen those Dormu. I wonder if we haven't seen them because they weren't maybe as exciting as these 3, but they still could be as impactful. So a couple of predictions that I had for Alexstrasza was maybe set both heroes to the same HP, whichever's higher. And it's not really something you put on the front stage of BlizzCon, but it could be something that's pretty interesting. And then those Dormu, right now the limitation with those Dormu, obviously it causes a whole lot of bugs and client issues and everything like that. And it limits the amount of playtime. What if it limited the number of cards that you could each play instead? So you can only play like 2 or 3 cards per turn instead. That would be really impactful for a control deck that only needs to play 1 or 2 cards and then slows down combo decks and other things, makes them deal with that before they can come back at you. I think those 2 cards could be pretty impactful. We haven't seen yet. If it's something like that, they keep kind of in the flavor of the existing dragons without necessarily being as flashy as what we saw with Malagos, Ysera, and Deathwing.
Alrighty. Justin.
Yeah, so I feel like this question's Corden probably hit on the head, but the question's a little weird. Which of these 3 dragon reworks are most impactful? Well, like only one of them actually existed as a card in previously and in 2021 Hearthstone. Like Ysera hasn't seen play the original one since I don't know Classic. Deathwing last saw play in like the Dragon Control Warrior and Meat Streets of Gadgetzin in like spring 2017. So for all extents and purposes, only one card existed here, and then they just deleted that card and made 3 new ones. So obviously the most impactful one is Malagos because they deleted it. It still sees play today. I mean, funny enough, I had a conversation with a friend a few months ago talking about how good Mally is, how omnipresent it is in every meta. It'll keep dealing +5 spell damage, keep making combo decks till hell freezes over. Well, turns out Texas was close enough for Blizzard, so it's gone. I mean, the new Mally, it's a completely different mechanic. It's a completely different card. We have seen so few cards of the new meta, and we can't even like have the standard of like what we normally do of evaluating new sets, of knowing what the classic set is, knowing what synergies there are. I mean, drawing the power of the mechanic of draw and spells depends a lot on the quality of spells, and we have no idea if all the spells that we know and love from Classic will still be there. But in terms of impactful changes that no one else mentions, I think the other big one is that noob Priest players that may not know it, but they should be rejoicing right now because they will no longer lose games to choosing Deathwing off of Draconic Studies and then playing a Lucia. which has befallen many a player. I mean, we're all good players here. Obviously, this hasn't happened to us, but we got to think of the core audience of the game who may not have quite as big brains as we do, who may be losing quite a few games to that. So now maybe they'll only lose like half the games they do that by accident. So it should be a pretty good change for them. I'm glad Blizzard has the average player in mind.
I've actually never seen that happen in a real game.
Oh,
To be honest
you
with
should
you.
play. You should play with more bad players.
I
you have
guess
to
I'm
really-
just I guess I'm just too good. What can I
Your
say?
MMR is
Mar-
too high.
Exactly. I know exactly how to remove my opponent's board and create tempo. Marty, what are your thoughts?
So there's a few different ways to look at this that you all really have to take into consideration. Blizzard, first of all, they said they're going to get rid of generation. So that means value bombs like Ysera are going to be much better because it adds what, 5 cards in your hand. It's a 9-mana draw 5 basically, which is insane because those cards are all high tempo, very high impact. Okay, so Ysera is probably going to see some play at some point. Malygos, it's definitely powerful. We have, crazy draw. It's gonna see play because we don't have that kind of draw before, and it enables a lot of different archetypes with a lot of spells. So it's likely we'll see it in some sort of control combo deck at some point. And like we don't really have that random generation for the infinite value anymore. These guys are supposed to be bombs that help finish games. So it's not a question of whether they'll see play, because they will see play. Now, given the smaller card pool, I don't think we're going to see as many combo archetypes. So I feel like we're going to want to go for the value bombs. Because when it comes to the first expansion of every single rotation, you usually go for slower value-oriented decks to kind of tempo out and then win with just a late-game bomb. And that would mean Ysera would have a lot more merit over some of the other cards. So I feel like Ysera has a very good chance of doing well early on. That being said, as more cards come out, they're going to want to have support for these core cards, and they're going to want to use them to enable crazy new archetypes that we haven't seen before. And I think that's where Malygos comes into play, where it's going to enable something insane that we don't know about, and it's going to be more powerful for a longer time than Ysera will. So it'll have a greater impact in that case. Obviously, Deathwing is there, and it's very powerful, but it's not something that you're going to see in Constructed very often. Because obviously, discarding your hand and going with a last-ditch effort doesn't usually work. So, with that in mind, I know Isocles mentioned that there's likely other dragons. We haven't seen Onyxia, we haven't seen Nozdormu, we haven't seen Alexstrasza. Now, Blizzard has had this thing where they'll hold good cards to the end to really surprise people. We saw this, for example, with Galakron Shaman, where Galakron Shaman was insane, but we only saw that on the final reveal stream. Okay, and I feel like with some of these dragons, one of those has to be incredibly impactful, and they're holding it back just to have an extra surprise. Now, whether it's flashy or not, that's hard to say, but it's definitely going to be strong, and it's going to be very impactful early on. There's no way they're going to go without having an impact